In Los Angeles' elite Titan's Edge gym, a smirking comedian actor was about to turn viral fame into a real-world reckoning. What started as a harmless celebrity parody shoot turned deadly serious when one living legend decided to train in silence rather than respond online. Ryan Reynolds wasn't your typical Hollywood funny man. For 2 decades, he'd been the sharpest wit in the business, known for turning mockery into marketing gold. But when Chuck Norris, a man forged in karate championships and covert military training, stepped into the same gym, he had no idea he was walking straight into the presence of an old-school master. Ryan's camera-ready confidence met real combat discipline, triggering a clash between viral fame and timeless respect. What began as a social media stunt would become a lesson in authenticity, humility, and control. And the gym where laughter met legacy would never be the same after Ryan Reynolds faced the legend he dared to mock. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Ryan Reynolds angled his phone toward the punching bag, capturing himself in frame with the sleek, modern equipment of Titan's Edge, Los Angeles' most exclusive training facility. Behind the camera, Kevin Hart's unmistakable laugh echoed through the pristine space. "Let me see that form again," Kevin wheezed, barely containing himself. "You gotta get the face right." Ryan squared up to the bag, deliberately stiffening his posture to mimic the rigid, decades-old training videos they'd been watching. He threw a series of robotic punches, his face locked in an exaggerated grimace of determination. "Welcome to Boomer CrossFit," Ryan announced in a deadpan imitation. "Today we're going to roundhouse kick Father Time right in his punctual face." Kevin doubled over, his laughter bouncing off the gym's polished concrete floors. A few other members glanced their way, some annoyed, others amused, but in a place frequented by celebrities, most just continued their workouts. "Do the one with the exercise bands?" Kevin urged, wiping tears from his eyes. Ryan grabbed a resistance band from a nearby rack and wrapped it around his legs, intentionally tangling himself before falling dramatically to the floor. "Remember," he continued in the same serious tone, "pain is just weakness leaving the body, along with your dignity and several essential motor functions." Kevin was practically howling now. "Man, Chuck Norris is going to put a Texas-sized boot in your ass for this." Ryan grinned at the camera. "Chuck's too busy roundhouse kicking his flip phone to check Instagram. Besides," he winked, "legends can take a joke, right?" The video ended with Ryan attempting and comically failing to perform a roundhouse kick, falling onto a padded bench with perfect comic timing. After a few quick edits, Ryan posted it to his social media with the caption, "Boomer CrossFit Challenge, in which I respectfully update the training methods of the 1,980 seconds. At Chuck Norris. Your move. Number Boomer CrossFit. Number roundhouse kicking myself." Within hours, the internet exploded. Dead. Officially deceased. Jue. 2, 3 M likes. This man woke up and chose violence against a literal legend. Jueo. 1, 7 M likes. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the world down. Jonder 950. 3 Kelvins likes. Ryan's social media team forwarded him dozens of remixed versions, fan reactions, and media inquiries. By evening, sports channels had picked it up. Entertainment sites were running headlines, and the Boomer CrossFit Challenge was trending across platforms. "You've outdone yourself," his publicist texted. "We've got Jimmy Fallon calling for an appearance. They want you to demo the workout on air." In his sleek downtown apartment, Ryan scrolled through the reactions, a satisfied smile playing across his lips. His phone buzzed with a FaceTime call from Kevin. "Yo." "We're viral," Kevin shouted, not bothering with a greeting. "My cousin's pastor's dentist in Nebraska just sent it to him." "You're everywhere, man." "I'm honestly surprised it hit this big," Ryan replied, though his tone suggested he wasn't surprised at all. He'd built a career on perfectly calibrated irreverence. "You seen anything from the man himself?" Kevin asked, lowering his voice dramatically. Ryan switched apps, checking for notifications. Nothing. Not a peep from the Chuck. Stir. "Maybe he's plotting his revenge," Kevin suggested, mock. Serious. "You know what they say, Chuck Norris doesn't sleep, he waits." "Or maybe," Ryan said with a casual shrug, "he's just showing his age. Not everyone gets modern social media. It's cool." The conversation moved on to upcoming projects and plans, but Ryan found himself checking Chuck Norris's dormant social media accounts more often than he'd admit. The silence was unexpected. Most celebrities would have responded by now with good humor, faux outrage, or a comeback challenge. The absence of reaction somehow felt more significant than any response could have been. The next morning, Ryan's agent called. "You're booked at Titan's Edge for a follow-up shoot tomorrow. Their socials want to collaborate on some content strike while the iron's hot, right?" "Perfect," Ryan agreed. "Kevin around to join?" "Already confirmed." "Oh. And they mentioned their VIP list for tomorrow. Lots of potential for good interactions." "Anyone interesting?" Ryan asked, distracted by another incoming call. "The usual suspects. DiCaprio's trainer. Couple UFC guys. Oh. And apparently Chuck Norris has his standing morning session." Ryan's finger froze above the screen. "Chuck trains there? Tomorrow?" "Yeah," his agent replied casually. "Been a member for years, from what the manager said. Probably nothing. But thought you should know. Could be awkward, or hilarious." "Definitely hilarious," Ryan said quickly, recovering his typical confidence. "Maybe we'll get the response video in person." But after hanging up, he found himself re-watching his own parody with newly critical eyes. It was funny. Sure, his comedy instincts rarely failed him, but something about knowing he might face Chuck in person made the jokes land differently. He scrolled through the comments again, past the thousands of laughing emojis and memes, landing on one that gave him unexpected pause. "Funny how we mock the old school while still chasing what they had. When's the last time any of us built something that lasts 50 years? The comment had only a handful of likes among the millions of reactions. But it lingered in Ryan's mind as he prepared for the next day's shoot. It was just a harmless parody, he reminded himself. Just entertainment. Just business. And yet, when he packed his gym bag that evening, he found himself including his actual training gear. Not just the props needed for the comedy bit. Just in case. Morning light spilled through the floor to ceiling windows of Titan's Edge, casting long shadows across the polished training floor. Ryan pushed through the glass doors, sunglasses still on. A carefully constructed aura of casual confidence surrounding him. Kevin trailed behind, already talking animatedly into his phone. "Telling you, man. It's gonna be epic. Round 2 of the Boomer CrossFit saga. We might even..." He broke off, spotting someone across the lobby. "Gotta go. History about to be made." The gym hummed with the quiet energy of serious training, nothing like the chaotic, music-thumping atmosphere of commercial fitness centers. Here, the wealthy and famous came to work, not to be seen. Or at least, to be seen working. Mia Tron approached them, tablet in hand, her posture as precisely balanced as one would expect from a former competitive fighter. As manager of Titan's Edge, she'd built a reputation for treating celebrities like regular clients and serious athletes like royalty. "Mr. Reynolds, Welcome back, she said, extending a hand. No fawning, no special treatment. Just professional courtesy. We've got the north section prepared for your shoot, as requested. Mia, please, after what you've seen me do to a rowing machine, I think we're on a first-name basis, Ryan replied with an easy smile. And thanks for accommodating us on short notice. The internet demands constant feeding, and who am I to deny it? Ryan versus Lake. The internet, part 2, Kevin interjected, pantomiming a boxing match. Mia's expression remained neutral, though Ryan caught the slight crinkling at the corner of her eyes. Your crew can set up whenever they're ready. Just be mindful of our other members, especially in the back training rings. Anyone I should avoid accidentally challenging to a duel today? Ryan asked, signing the digital waiver she'd presented. I've already offended the entire Hemsworth lineage with my Thor impression. Something shifted subtly in Mia's demeanor, a barely perceptible straightening of her spine. Actually, Mr. Norris is in his regular session this morning. Back training ring. The pen hovered over the tablet for a fraction of a second. Ryan's smile never wavered, but Kevin's eyes widened comically. Chuck Norris? Like, the Chuck Norris? The man. The myth. The meme. Kevin Stage whispered, loud enough for half the gym to hear. Ryan tapped the tablet, completing his signature with a flourish. Well, that's serendipitous timing. Universe has a sense of humor. Mr. Norris values his privacy, Mia added, her tone still professional but carrying an unmistakable note of protectiveness. He's been a member since we opened, before the building even had walls, actually. Don't worry, Ryan assured her, removing his sunglasses and tucking them into his shirt. We're just here to shoot some harmless content. I respect the temple that is Titan's Edge. As Mia led them toward the north section, Kevin leaned in close to Ryan. Dude, Chuck Norris is literally in this building right now. The guy you just turned into a viral punchline. You gonna say something to him? If the opportunity presents itself, Ryan replied with practiced nonchalance. It's not like I insulted his mother. It was a friendly joke between fellow action stars. Fellow action stars, Kevin repeated, eyebrows raised. Like how me and Shaq are fellow basketball players. Details. As they passed the juice bar, an older man with weathered hands wrapped in traditional hand wraps looked up from his protein shake. Coach Alvarez had the compact build and watchful eyes of someone who'd spent decades in combat sports. The creases around his eyes deepened as he observed their passing. That's new content walking in, he commented to the young fighter beside him. And old wisdom already here. Gonna be an interesting morning. Ryan caught the remark but maintained his stride, leading his small entourage toward their designated area. The film crew was already setting up lights and checking angles, professionals working with quiet efficiency. But even as he greeted them, Ryan found his attention drawn toward the back of the gym, where heavy bags swayed with metronomic precision. He couldn't see who was hitting them, but he could feel a different energy emanating from that section, steady, unhurried, relentless. We thinking sequel or reboot for today? Asked his social media director, tablet in hand displaying potential concepts. Let's play it by ear, Ryan replied, uncharacteristically distracted. I'm feeling spontaneous. Kevin, meanwhile, had already pulled out his phone, surreptitiously angling it toward the back training rings. You think he's seen the video? Chuck, I mean. Does Chuck Norris strike you as the Instagram type? Ryan countered. But the question had already burrowed into his mind. Their conversation was interrupted by the distinct sound of a heavy bag receiving a perfectly executed roundhouse kick, a sharp crack that somehow cut through the ambient gym noise. Several heads turned instinctively toward the sound. That Kevin whispered, was not a boomer CrossFit kick. That was the real deal. Ryan's director cleared his throat. We're ready when you are. Starting with the resistance band gag? Yeah. Give me a minute to change, Ryan replied, grabbing his gym bag and heading toward the locker room. Inside, he found himself alone with his reflection in the mirror. He looked exactly as he always did, fit, camera ready, with the precise amount of stubble that suggested effortless charm rather than actual effort. The face that had launched 1,000 memes stared back at him. For a brief moment, he considered his options. They could shoot the planned content, more jokes, more parody, double down on the viral moment. It was the obvious play, the safe one. Or, Ryan fished his phone from his pocket, opening the video that had exploded across the internet. Watching it now, in this space, it felt different. Not unfunny, but somehow smaller. His mockery of the old-school training methods suddenly seemed less like satire and more like, what? Disrespect? No, that wasn't it exactly. A voice from the doorway interrupted his thoughts. In my experience, said Coach Alvarez, entering the locker room with a towel slung over his shoulder, humor works best when you're punching up, not down. Ryan pocketed his phone. I didn't realize Chuck Norris was down from anybody. The man's a legend. Exactly, Alvarez replied simply, moving to his locker. Legends earn that status. The rest of us are just making noise until proven otherwise. With that, he disappeared into the shower area, leaving Ryan alone again with his reflection and a growing sense that today might not go according to script. As he changed into his workout gear, the real stuff, not the prop clothing brought for the shoot, Ryan made a decision. He'd still film something, but maybe with a different angle. Maybe something that acknowledged the gap between parody and reality. Kevin was waiting when he emerged. Crew's ready, but... He glanced nervously toward the back of the gym. I just saw him. Like, actually saw Chuck Norris in the flesh. He's doing this insane training circuit that looks like it would kill most 20-year-olds. Well, Ryan said, adjusting the strap of his gym bag. I think it's time to pay my respects in person, don't you? Kevin's eyes widened. You serious? Always. But I hide it well. Ryan started walking toward the back training rings, his stride purposeful but unhurried. Coming? Kevin hesitated only briefly before following. This is either going to be the best content ever or the last content you ever make. As they approached the back section, Ryan could hear his crew following at a discreet distance, cameras at the ready. The atmosphere seemed to thicken with each step, the air itself becoming charged with something intangible. And then, he saw him. Chuck Norris. 70-plus years on this earth. Moving with the fluid precision of someone half his age. No audience, no showmanship, just pure, practiced discipline. Each punch, each kick, executed with economy of motion that spoke of countless hours of repetition. This wasn't performance, it was practice. The real thing. For perhaps the first time in his professional life, Ryan Reynolds found himself momentarily speechless. Chuck Norris executed a flawless combination against the heavy bag jab, cross, hook, roundhouse kick, each movement flowing into the next with machine-like precision. His form wasn't showy or exaggerated. It was economical, refined by decades of practice into something approaching perfection. The heavy bag swayed rhythmically, absorbing impacts that echoed through this section of the gym with a cadence as regular as a metronome. Sweat darkened his simple gray t-shirt along the collar and back, but his breathing remained controlled, almost meditative. His focus was absolute, not the manufactured intensity of a movie scene or the performative focus of an Instagram workout, but the genuine absorption of a master craftsman lost in his element. Ryan paused at the edge of the training area, suddenly aware of the cameras behind him, the eyes tracking his approach. the expectations hovering in the air. His carefully constructed entrance, the casual confidence he'd maintained since walking through Titan's Edge's doors, felt increasingly hollow with each passing second. For perhaps the first time in his public life, he felt the weight of artifice in his own performance. "This feels like walking into the wrong saloon in a Western," he murmured to Kevin, the quip automatic, but lacking his usual conviction. "Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story." Kevin, for once, had no quick comeback. He simply nodded, phone held limply at his side, temporarily forgotten. His eyes were fixed on Chuck, with an almost childlike reverence, the look of someone seeing a legend in the flesh. Several gym members had paused their workouts, sensing the imminent collision of worlds. A trainer near the squat rack whispered to his client, both watching the scene unfold while pretending not to. Mia observed from the glass-walled office, her professional composure intact but attention fully engaged. Even the usually impassive Coach Alvarez had positioned himself within earshot. Towel slung over his shoulder, expression carefully neutral but missing nothing. The rhythmic impacts of Chuck's combinations continued uninterrupted by their arrival. Not ignoring them, Ryan could tell from the subtle shift in Chuck's positioning that he was fully aware of their presence, simply not making them the center of his reality. The distinction was subtle but unmistakable, and somehow more imposing than any direct acknowledgement could have been. Ryan cleared his throat. "Think I should applaud or wait for the finale?" The quip fell flat in the charged atmosphere, its artificial lightness jarring against the authentic intensity of Chuck's training. Even to his own ears, the humor sounded forced, a reflex rather than a response. He felt Kevin shift uncomfortably beside him, and the camera crew exchanged glances behind them. Before Kevin could respond, Chuck delivered a final devastating kick to the bag. A perfect roundhouse that connected with such precision that the heavy bag barely swung, absorbing the concentrated force with a sharp crack that silenced the ambient gym noise for a split second. Then Chuck turned, towel in hand, and acknowledged their presence with a slight nod. Up close, Chuck Norris was both exactly what Ryan expected and nothing like he'd imagined. Shorter than his screen presence suggested, but somehow occupying more space through sheer presence. His features were weathered by time, but his eyes remained startlingly clear, direct, alert, and utterly unreadable. There was none of the practiced neutrality of a celebrity accustomed to being approached, no public persona sliding into place. Just a steady, assessing gaze that took in Ryan, Kevin, and the hovering camera crew in one sweeping glance. "Mr. Norris," Ryan began, extending his hand and summoning the charm that had carried him through countless interviews, fan encounters, and awkward social situations. "Ryan Reynolds, I'm a huge admirer of your work, both on screen and—" He gestured toward the heavy bag, still swinging slightly from the impact, clearly off it as well. Chuck accepted the handshake with a firm grip, strong but not challenging, confident but not aggressive. Just the handshake of a man, comfortable in his own skin. "Reynolds," he acknowledged with a slight Texas drawl that age had not diminished. "Saw your Deadpool films. Good physical comedy. Hard to do well." The simple, straightforward compliment caught Ryan off guard. No mention of the viral video. No reference to the millions of people laughing at the parody of his training style. No hint of offense or amusement or anything that would give Ryan an easy read on how to proceed. "Thank you. That means a lot. Coming from someone who pioneered action comedy," Ryan replied, finding himself reaching for sincerity rather than his usual irony. "Though I have significantly fewer actual skills than my character pretends to have." A small smile flickered across Chuck's face. "Most do." The observation wasn't delivered as a criticism or a challenge, just a simple statement of fact. Chuck began unwrapping the hand wraps from his left hand with methodical precision. The movements, as practiced and economical as his strikes, had been moments before. The conversation paused as Chuck continued unwrapping, the silence stretching between them. Ryan became acutely aware of the camera crew hovering at a respectful distance, Kevin's barely contained energy beside him, and most of all, his own racing thoughts. This meeting was content gold, the unexpected face-to-face after the viral mockery, but suddenly the planned follow-up jokes felt wrong. Not just wrong, small. Around them, the gym had developed the strange hush that follows celebrities, a bubble of artificial space where everyone pretends not to be watching while missing nothing. Ryan could feel the weight of expectations from his crew, from the onlookers, from the invisible audience that would eventually consume whatever emerged from this encounter. The pressure to perform, to create a moment, to turn this into something shareable, was almost palpable. "I don't know if you happened to see a video I posted recently," Ryan began, already regretting the direction, but committed now. Sort of a playful take on old-school training videos. Chuck folded his hand wraps with military precision, creasing them along well-worn lines before securing them with their Velcro tabs. "I've seen it." Just that. No elaboration. No offense taken. No criticism offered. 3 words that somehow carried more weight than 1,000 could have. Ryan waited for more, but Chuck simply continued his post-workout routine, taking a measured sip from his water bottle, his movements unhurried but purposeful. "And any thoughts?" Ryan prompted, uncharacteristically uncertain. It was meant as homage, sort of, with liberties taken. Chuck regarded him steadily, his expression neither stern nor amused, simply attentive. "Humor changes with the times. Training fundamentals don't." Another simple statement that somehow cut through layers of irony and deflection. Ryan found himself nodding, genuinely considering the words, rather than immediately formulating a witty response. Kevin, unable to contain himself any longer, stepped forward. "Sir, Mr. Norris, I just have to say you're a legend, man. Like, an actual living legend. The kicks, the movies, the memes. Especially the memes. Did you know there's one where they say you can slam a revolving door?" A hint of amusement crossed Chuck's face, softening the weathered lines around his eyes. "I've heard that one. Would you mind?" Kevin held up his phone hopefully. "Maybe just a quick selfie. For posterity? Historical documentation?" Chuck glanced at the phone, then at the hovering camera crew, then back to Ryan. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the performative nature of the moment, the content being created, the social media narrative unfolding in real time. "Sure," Chuck agreed, moving beside Kevin for the photo. Ryan watched, struck by the bizarre reality of the moment. Here was Chuck Norris, martial arts champion, action star, cultural icon, calmly taking a selfie with Kevin Hart, while the Boomer CrossFit Challenge creator stood awkwardly to the side. The internet would explode all over again, but in a way none of them had anticipated. Kevin's face lit up with genuine joy as he positioned himself next to Chuck, holding the phone at the perfect angle with practiced ease. "This is going straight to the grandkids someday. When I have grandkids, which requires having kids first. Working on that part." Chuck's smile was small but authentic, as Kevin snapped several photos in quick succession. This wasn't the practiced celebrity smile Ryan recognized from his own red carpet appearances. It was simply the polite accommodation of someone unbothered by the minor interruption to his day. After the photo, Chuck turned back to Ryan, his expression returning to its default state of calm attentiveness. "I train here 3 mornings a week. Have for 20 years. He gestured toward the private sparring room adjacent to the training area. If you're interested in learning rather than just showing, you're welcome to join. No cameras. The invitation hung in the air, simple but profound. Not a challenge, not a threat. Merely an offer. Ryan glanced at his waiting crew, the content scheduled, the expectations set. The easy path would be to deflect with humor, to keep things light and surface level, to maintain the dynamic that had served him so well throughout his career. Chuck was offering something else, something genuine but demanding in its genuineness. "I'd actually like that," he heard himself say. Surprising not just his crew, but himself, with the sincerity in his voice. "Though I should warn you, my roundhouse kick is legitimately as bad as it looked in that video." For the first time, Chuck smiled fully, a brief but genuine expression that transformed his stoic features. "Everyone starts somewhere. Even at my age, I'm still learning." Kevin's eyes darted between them, sensing the shift in energy. The narrative, taking an unexpected turn. "So, we postponing the shoot, or?" Ryan made a decision. "Give us 30 minutes. Then we'll do something different than planned." He turned to Chuck. "If that's all right with you?" Chuck was already moving toward the private sparring room, not assuming Ryan would follow but not doubting it either. "Your time. Your choice. How to spend it." As Ryan followed, he caught sight of Mia Tran watching from her office doorway, a look of quiet approval on her face. Across the gym, Coach Alvarez nodded once, as if confirming some private prediction. The social media director stepped forward anxiously. "Ryan, we had the whole bit planned, the comedy follow-up, the mock training session. The audience is expecting something authentic." Ryan finished for him. "Let's give them that instead." The director looked unconvinced, but Ryan was already moving away, following Chuck toward the sparring room. There was something liberating in the decision. A weightlifting that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. Kevin hesitated, torn between following Ryan and staying with the crew. "Should I?" "This one's just us," Ryan replied, surprising himself again with the certainty in his voice. "Keep them entertained. I'll be back." As he approached the sparring room, Ryan felt an unusual sensation settling over him, the quiet anticipation of something genuine. Not the manufactured anticipation of a movie premiere or a viral stunt, but something more elemental. The feeling of stepping out of the performance and into something real. Chuck held the door open, his expression neutral but not unwelcoming. Ryan passed through, aware that he was crossing more than just a physical threshold. Behind them, the gym continued its morning rhythm, weights clanking, treadmills humming, conversations flowing. But as the door closed with a soft click, those sounds faded, replaced by a different kind of silence. The private sparring room was nothing like the sleek, camera-ready main gym. Here, the equipment showed signs of actual use: scuffed mats, well-worn heavy bags, mirrors that reflected reality rather than crafted images. No mood lighting, no designer touches, just a space designed for function rather than appearance. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Ryan Reynolds stepped fully out of character, away from the cameras, beyond the reach of likes and shares and comments. Whatever happened next wouldn't be content, it would be experience. And somehow, that felt more significant than any viral moment could have been. The private sparring room was a stark contrast to the gleaming, Instagram-ready main gym. Here, the equipment showed signs of actual use: scuffed mats with corners taped down from years of foot traffic, heavy bags, worn smooth in places from countless impacts, wall-mounted mirrors bearing the subtle fingerprints of fighters checking their form. The air held the honest scent of effort and discipline, not the sanitized, fragrant atmosphere of the public space, but something more elemental. Decades of dedication had seeped into these walls, creating an atmosphere that no designer could manufacture. The fluorescent lighting cast everything in an unforgiving clarity. No filters here, no carefully angled shadows to enhance definition or hide flaws. Just the merciless illumination of reality. Chuck moved to the center of the room, with the same measured confidence he'd displayed outside. He didn't announce his intention or explain the shift in environment, he simply occupied the space, as if it were an extension of himself. No theatrics, no performance, just the same authentic presence that had drawn Ryan's attention from across the gym. He gestured for Ryan to join him on the central mat, his expression neither intimidating nor patronizing. Just patient. Basic stance first, Chuck said. Demonstrating a fighting position, feet shoulder width apart, weight balanced evenly. Hands raised protectively, but not tensely. No preamble, no small talk, straight to fundamentals. His demonstration wasn't showy or exaggerated. Just clean, functional movement. Ryan mirrored the stance, immediately aware of how artificial it felt compared to the rehearsed movie poses he'd struck 1,000 times for cameras. On film sets, stunt coordinators positioned him for maximum visual impact, chin angled just so, shoulders squared to the camera, posture heroic rather than practical. This was different, functional rather than visual, purposed for effectiveness rather than appearance. Lower your center, Chuck instructed, reaching out to adjust Ryan's posture with a light touch to his shoulder. The contact was brief but purposeful, communicating more clearly than words could have. Power comes from the ground up, not the shoulders down. Ryan made the correction, feeling the subtle but significant shift in balance. His body settled into something that felt less camera-ready but more stable, less imposing but more grounded. In movies, they always tell me to stand higher, he observed, genuinely interested in the distinction. Better camera angle for the face. Movies are about looking good. Fighting is about being effective. Chuck replied without judgment. Both have their place. The simple differentiation landed with unexpected weight. Ryan nodded, absorbing the insight with genuine appreciation rather than mining it for future content. For the next several minutes, Chuck guided Ryan through basic movements, a proper jab, footwork fundamentals, the mechanics of generating power from the hips rather than the arms. Each instruction was concise, direct, and focused on underlying principles rather than superficial form. Weight transfers from back foot to front, Chuck demonstrated, throwing a simple straight punch that carried a quiet authority despite its lack of theatricality. Power generation starts at the floor, travels through the body. Ryan attempted to replicate the movement, focusing on the internal mechanics rather than the external appearance. After several attempts, he began to feel the difference, the integrated power that came from proper technique rather than isolated muscle tension. Most people punch with their arm, Chuck observed, watching Ryan's attempts with clinical attention. Real power comes from the whole body moving as one unit. Ryan tried again, this time concentrating on the connection between foot, hip, and shoulder. The resulting punch felt fundamentally different, more substantial somehow, though less visually dramatic. That's it, Chuck acknowledged with a slight nod. Feel the difference? Completely, Ryan replied, genuinely surprised by the distinction. It's less performative. Exactly. Effectiveness often looks less impressive than showmanship, but it gets the job done. The observation resonated beyond its immediate application. Ryan found himself considering how this principle might apply to other aspects of his life and career, the difference between what looked good and what actually worked. They continued through several more fundamental techniques, Chuck occasionally demonstrating, always observing with attentive precision. His teaching style was neither warm nor cold, simply direct. No unnecessary praise, no harsh criticism, just accurate assessment and clear guidance. You have good coordination, Chuck observed, after Ryan successfully executed a basic combination. Natural timing. Years of dancing around uncomfortable questions on press tours, Ryan quipped automatically, then caught himself. Sorry. Reflex. Chuck's expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested understanding. Humor is armor. Useful. But sometimes gets in the way of learning. The observation struck closer to home than Ryan expected. He'd built a career, an entire public persona around weaponized wit, using humor to deflect, disarm, and distance. It was a strategy that had served him well, but in this context, it felt suddenly transparent. He nodded, absorbing the insight along with the physical instruction. Occupational hazard. I default to jokes when things get real. Most people have some version of that, Chuck replied, his tone matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. Different shields for different people. The trick is knowing when to lower them. Ryan felt an unexpected vulnerability in the observation, not uncomfortable, exactly, but unfamiliar. He was accustomed to controlling conversations, shaping interactions through humor and charm. Chuck's straightforward approach offered no purchase for those tools. Now, Chuck continued, moving to the center of the mat. Try to hit me. Ryan blinked, certain he'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Simple sparring, light contact, apply what we just covered. Chuck stood relaxed, hands raised in the same basic defensive position he'd demonstrated earlier. Nothing flashy or intimidating, just balanced readiness. Don't worry about hurting me. That is literally the last thing I'm worried about, Ryan replied, genuine concern in his voice. I'm more worried about you reflexively sending me through that wall before my brain registers what happened. A hint of amusement crossed Chuck's face, not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. Control is the most important skill. I've had decades to practice it. The reassurance was delivered with such quiet confidence that Ryan found himself nodding, accepting the invitation, despite its apparent absurdity. The actor in him recognized the narrative potential of the moment, but something deeper was responding to the authenticity of the exchange. Tentatively, Ryan approached, assuming the stance they'd worked on. He felt awkward and exposed. No script, no marks to hit, no carefully choreographed sequence to follow. Just improvisation with actual consequences. He threw a cautious jab, telegraphing his intention so clearly that Chuck could have evaded it with his eyes closed. Instead, Chuck simply deflected it with a minimal movement of his forearm, efficient, controlled, almost gentle in its precision. Committed, Chuck instructed, his breathing unchanged by the exchange. Halfway techniques are worse than bad ones. They teach your body the wrong patterns. Ryan recognized the wisdom in this. How many times had directors told him the same thing about acting, that tentative choices were worse than bold ones, even if the bold ones failed? Commitment was universal across disciplines. He tried again, this time putting genuine intent behind the strike. Not full power, he wasn't that foolish, but honest effort, rather than performative gesture. Chuck slipped it with a subtle shift of weight, then countered with a light tap to Ryan's ribs, contact so controlled it communicated the opening without causing discomfort. A teaching touch rather than a demonstrative one. You telegraph your intentions, Chuck observed. Good for comedy, bad for fighting. Something about the simple honesty of the criticism cut through Ryan's usual defenses. There was no malice in it, no competitive edge. Just the straightforward assessment of someone who had mastered his craft and had no need to prove anything to anyone. Story of my life, Ryan admitted with a self-deprecating smile. I've built a career on being predictably unpredictable. Chuck nodded, understanding the deeper implication. Different contexts, different rules. What works in your world would get you hurt in mine. What works in mine might get you canceled in yours. The observation was unexpectedly insightful, acknowledging the gap between their worlds without judgment. Chuck wasn't dismissing Ryan's skills or success, just recognizing the different demands of different arenas. They continued for several minutes, Ryan attacking with increasing commitment, Chuck defending with effortless economy of motion. Each exchange was a lesson not just in physical technique, but in the underlying principles of discipline, focus, and humility. Ryan found himself fully engaged in the process, his usual self-awareness temporarily suspended. He wasn't thinking about how this would play on camera, wasn't framing the experience for future retelling, wasn't calculating its potential value as content. He was simply present, learning something real from someone who had mastered it. After a particularly instructive sequence where Chuck demonstrated how a single misplaced foot created cascading vulnerabilities, they paused for water. Ryan was breathing harder than he'd expected, his t-shirt damp with honest exertion rather than the camera-ready athletic sheen that makeup artists often applied for workout scenes. He found himself studying Chuck with new eyes as the older man drank water with the same mindfulness he brought to everything else. Chuck's movements held no wasted energy, no unnecessary flourish. Even the simple act of drinking water had a quality of presence to it, conscious, deliberate, aware. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan ventured, wiping his face with a towel. Chuck nodded once, his expression open but unreadable. "The video I posted, the one that went viral. Millions of people laughing at old-school training methods, at the things you pioneered." Ryan hesitated, genuinely concerned now about potential offense rather than performatively navigating a social situation. "Doesn't that, I don't know, bother you?" Chuck considered the question, taking his time before answering. He didn't rush to fill the silence with reassurance or dismissal, just gave the question the consideration it deserved. "Do you know why those old training methods work?" he finally asked, his tone suggesting genuine inquiry rather than rhetorical setup. Ryan shook his head. "Because they focus on what matters and discard what doesn't. No shortcuts. No tricks." Chuck set down his water bottle with the same precision he applied to everything. "The internet has opinions on everything. Always changing. Fundamentals don't change. That's why they're fundamental." He demonstrated a simple punching motion, the same basic technique that fighters had used for centuries. This works the same today as it did 50 years ago. Will work the same 50 years from now. Trends come and go. Basics remain. The insight landed with unexpected weight. Ryan found himself nodding, genuinely processing the words rather than immediately framing them as content for later use. "I guess I never thought about it that way," he admitted. "In my world, everything is about the next trend, the next platform, the next viral moment. Staying current is survival. Different arenas, different rules," Chuck acknowledged. "But even in entertainment, the fundamentals matter. Timing, presence, authenticity. The platforms change, but what connects with people doesn't." Ryan considered this, recognizing the truth in it. Despite all the technological changes in entertainment, the essence of what made people laugh or cry or care remained surprisingly constant. "Ready to continue?" Chuck asked, moving back to the center of the mat. Ryan rejoined him, newly focused. This time, when they engaged, he was fully present, not performing, not calculating his next line, simply attempting to apply what he'd been shown with honest effort. Chuck nodded approvingly. "Better. Now you're training, not acting." The distinction resonated deeply. Ryan realized how much of his life was spent performing rather than experiencing. Always aware of the potential audience, always crafting the narrative, always constructing rather than simply being. They worked through several more combinations, Chuck occasionally stopping to make small adjustments to Ryan's form or timing. The instruction was never condescending, never showy, just clear, direct knowledge transfer from someone who had walked the path to someone taking their first steps. Keep your guard consistent, Chuck advised after slipping past Ryan's defenses with a light counter. Many fighters drop their hands when they're thinking about the next move. Telegraphs intention creates openings. Like poker tells, Ryan observed, making the connection to something familiar. Exactly. Same principle. Different application. Mind and body need to work separately but together. One executing. One planning ahead. At one point, Ryan attempted a slightly more complex movement they'd been working on. Lost his balance, and had to catch himself against the wall. In any other context, he would have immediately transformed the moment into a joke, turning the error into entertainment through self-deprecation. Instead, he simply reset his position and tried again, focusing on correcting what had gone wrong rather than managing how the mistake was perceived. Chuck nodded. Good. Learning happens in the recovery, not the success. The observation contained a profound truth that extended far beyond fighting technique. Ryan found himself considering how often he avoided real learning by immediately reframing failures as humor, never sitting with the discomfort long enough to extract its lessons. As their session neared its end, Ryan felt something he hadn't expected. A genuine sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with likes, views, or viral moments. He had learned something real, something that couldn't be quantified in engagement metrics or translated into career currency. Chuck demonstrated one final technique, a simple but effective defensive counter that incorporated everything they'd worked on. The movement was neither flashy nor dramatic, but its efficiency was beautiful in its own way. As Ryan attempted to replicate it, Chuck observed quietly. Control isn't showmanship. It's knowing exactly what you're capable of, then staying within those boundaries until they expand. The words resonated beyond their immediate context, touching on something fundamental about the difference between their approaches to life and career. Ryan paused, absorbing the insight. Thank you, he said simply. For taking the time. Chuck inclined his head slightly. Time spent learning is never wasted. He checked his watch, an actual watch, not a smartphone, and added, Your camera crew is probably getting anxious. Reality crashed back in. The content shoot, the viral follow-up. The expectations waiting outside those doors. Ryan realized with a start that he'd completely forgotten about the cameras, the narrative, the content plan for 30 minutes. None of it had mattered. It was a strange sensation for someone who lived so much of his life with an awareness of how each moment might translate to public consumption. Yeah, he agreed, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. I should probably get back to them. As they gathered their things, Ryan found himself reluctant to return to the performance that awaited him. Something had shifted during their brief training session, subtle but significant, like the weight adjustment Chuck had shown him in his fighting stance. At the door, Chuck paused. The best content, he said, surprising Ryan with his use of the modern terminology, comes from authentic experience, not manufactured moments. Ryan looked at him with newfound respect. How did you? I may be old school, Chuck replied with the hint of a smile. But I'm not oblivious. The world changes. Human nature doesn't. With that, he opened the door, letting in the reality that awaited them, both the cameras, the expectations, and the choice of what narrative would emerge from their unexpected encounter. But as they stepped back into the public space, Ryan realized he was carrying something with him from that private room. Not just techniques or insights, but a quality of presence he'd rarely accessed before. The performance would resume, the content would be created, the viral story would unfold. But something fundamental had shifted in how he understood his relationship to it all. Chuck had taught him more than fighting basics. He'd offered a glimpse of what it meant to act from center, rather than for effect a lesson that no amount of likes or shares could quantify, but that Ryan suspected might prove more valuable than any viral moment he'd ever created. The locker room was empty save for Ryan, sitting alone on a bench, still in his training clothes, hair damp from exertion rather than carefully styled for the camera. The polished concrete floor beneath his feet still bore the faint scuff marks of countless athletes who had passed through before him. Real fighters, dedicated trainers, people who came here for the work rather than the image of working. Ryan stared at his phone, scrolling through the tsunami of notifications from the viral video comments, shares, remixes, all centered around a joke that now felt hollow in the aftermath of what he'd just experienced. The screen cast a pale blue glow across his features in the subdued lighting of the empty room. Oh my God! Ryan vs. Chuck is the showdown we deserve. Oving. 687 Kelvin's likes. Boomer CrossFit Challenge accepted. Here's me trying the Reynolds method. Chondi. 240. 3 Kelvin's likes. When's the collab dropping? Take my money now. 159 Kelvin's likes. On the screen, a notification popped up from his social media director. Perfect setup for the follow-up. Crew's ready when you are. Another message appeared seconds later. Are we still shooting? Crew's waiting. Kevin Ryan didn't reply immediately. Instead, he opened his original video again, watching his exaggerated parody of old-school training methods with new eyes. The humor was still there, he hadn't lost his sense of comedy, but something else had emerged alongside it. Context. Perspective. The realization that he'd been mocking something he didn't fully understand, something that contained depths he hadn't acknowledged. In the video, he performed an intentionally stiff roundhouse kick, falling dramatically for the punchline. Now, with the memory of Chuck's perfect technique fresh in his mind, he could see the gulf between his parody and the reality it referenced. His comedy wasn't exactly wrong, there was genuine humor in the contrast between old-school training videos and modern fitness aesthetics, but it was incomplete, surface level. It missed the substance beneath the style. The locker room door swung open with a soft hydraulic hiss, and Mia Tran entered, carrying a stack of fresh towels. She paused momentarily when she saw Ryan, then nodded professionally and continued with her task. Sorry, Ryan said, making to stand. I didn't realize this was… It's fine, she interrupted, setting the towels on a shelf with precise movements. I supply both locker rooms. Part of the job. Ryan settled back onto the bench, oddly grateful for the company that asked nothing of him. For a moment, they existed in comfortable silence, him with his thoughts, her with her task. No performance, no expectations, just two people occupying the same space with their respective purposes. Mia moved with the economic grace of someone who had trained seriously, no wasted motion, no performative flourishes. Ryan found himself watching her work with a new appreciation for that quality of movement, so different from the carefully choreographed physicality of film sets and photo shoots. He's been coming here for 2 decades, Mia said finally, breaking the quiet. 3 times a week, same routine, same intensity. Never misses, never shows off. Ryan looked up from his phone. Chuck? Mia nodded, adjusting the stack of towels with methodical precision. When I took over management 5 years ago, I asked him why he still trains so hard. No cameras, no tournaments, no movies to prepare for. You know what he said? Ryan set his phone down on the bench beside him, the notifications momentarily forgotten. What? Because this is who I am, not what I do. Mia straightened a row of product bottles with the same attention to detail she brought to everything. Stuck with me, that line. The simple statement landed with surprising weight. Ryan turned it over in his mind, feeling its contours against his own approach to life and career. How much of what he did was because it was truly him, And how much was because it was what people expected of Ryan Reynolds, the brand, the personality, the curated public image. He put me through my paces in there, Ryan admitted, gesturing vaguely toward the sparring room. Not physically though, that too, but he searched for the right words. Perspective-wise. Mia smiled slightly, the expression subtle but genuine. He's like that with everyone. You're lucky most people don't get a lesson like that. I get the feeling I've barely scratched the surface. From what I saw, you did better than most first-timers. Mia finished arranging the products, then added with quiet certainty, he doesn't waste time on people he doesn't think are worth it. Something about the observation felt more meaningful than all the public validation that had flooded his notifications. Not because it was praise, there was nothing fawning or impressed in Mia's tone, but because it felt honest. Earned rather than offered. Before Ryan could respond, the door opened again, admitting Kevin, who surveyed the scene with visible confusion. Dude, what happened in there? The crew's been waiting for like an hour. And you're in here having a moment? Kevin's eyes darted between Ryan and Mia, misreading the situation entirely. Just catching my breath, Ryan replied, standing and gaining some perspective. Kevin glanced at Ryan's phone, still buzzing with notifications on the bench. While your phone blows up with the biggest viral moment of the month, perspective's great. But we've got content to shoot, remember? The follow-up? The big reveal? Kevin made explosive gestures with his hands. Viral aftermath? Ryan pocketed his phone, the constant vibration of incoming notifications feeling suddenly less compelling than it had just hours earlier. Change of plans. Change of what are you talking about? We've got the perfect setup. Chuck Norris himself is out there. This is internet gold. Exactly, Ryan agreed. It is. But not the way we planned. He started gathering his things. A new certainty forming in his mind. Kevin watched, bewildered, as Ryan pulled out his regular clothes rather than the comedy props they'd brought for the shoot. I'm not following, Kevin admitted. His usual rapid-fire energy momentarily stalled by confusion. Ryan paused, considering how to explain the shift he'd experienced. It wasn't a dramatic conversion or epiphany, just a subtle realignment. A shift in perspective that was small in the moment, but potentially far-reaching in its implications. Do you remember when we first started in comedy? Before the fame, before the franchises, when we were just trying to make people laugh because it felt good? Yeah, but what does that have to... In there, Ryan gestured toward the sparring room. I wasn't Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, social media personality. I was just a guy learning something real from someone who's mastered it. No cameras, no likes, no performance. And it felt terrifying, Kevin suggested with half a smile. Authentic, Ryan corrected. It felt authentic. The word hung in the air between them. Not judgmental, not accusatory, just honest recognition of something that had been missing without him fully realizing its absence. Mia, who had been quietly observing their exchange, nodded almost imperceptibly before slipping out of the locker room, leaving them to their conversation. The door closed behind her with a soft click that punctuated the moment. Kevin's expression softened with understanding. His manic energy receded, replaced by something more contemplative. Despite his public persona as the perpetual hype man, Kevin had depths that most people never glimpsed, genuine insight behind the constant comedy. So what are you saying? We cancel the shoot? No, Ryan replied, pulling on his shirt. We change it. Make something real, instead of something easy. Kevin considered this. His head tilted slightly. You mean like documentary style? Behind the scenes with Chuck Norris? Something like that. But genuine. Not manufactured authenticity. The real thing. That's actually not a bad pivot, Kevin acknowledged, his quick mind already adapting to the new direction. Might not go as viral as the comedy bit, but it might matter more, Ryan finished. To fewer people, maybe, but in a different way. As they exited the locker room, they found Coach Alvarez leaning against the wall outside, arms crossed, expression unreadable. His weathered face had the quality of ancient leather worn by experience rather than time alone. "Your camera friends are getting restless?" he observed, jerking his chin toward the main gym where the crew waited. "Keep looking at their watches like time's money." "It is in their world," Ryan acknowledged. Alvarez snorted softly, the sound carrying decades of seen-it-all perspective. "Their world's awfully small then." The simple assessment struck a chord with Ryan's new perspective. There was something refreshing about Alvarez's complete indifference to the machinery of celebrity and content creation, not hostile, just operating on an entirely different value system. "Can I ask you something?" Ryan said. "You've been in this game a long time, right? Trained with legends, seen the real deal?" Alvarez nodded once. The motion, economical, like everything else about him. "What's the difference between someone like Chuck and—" He gestured vaguely at himself, encompassing everything the gesture implied about modern celebrity and performative fitness culture. "Besides about 40 years of discipline?" Alvarez's weathered face creased with dry amusement. "Simple. He trains when nobody's watching. Trains because it's who he is, not for what it gets him." Ryan absorbed this, feeling the truth of it resonate with his earlier experience. The insight wasn't particularly complex or profound, but its simplicity carried weight precisely because it was so fundamental. "Most folks these days," Alvarez continued, glancing toward the camera crew visible through the gym's glass partitions, "they perform training, put on a show. Nothing wrong with that. Entertainment has its place. But don't mistake the performance for the substance." "I think I'm starting to see that," Ryan admitted. Alvarez studied him for a moment, then nodded again, seemingly satisfied with what he saw. "Good. That's something at least." With that assessment, neither harsh nor particularly warm, just honest, Alvarez pushed off from the wall and headed back toward the training area, his compact frame moving with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who he was and required no external validation of that knowledge. Ryan rejoined Kevin and made his way toward the waiting film crew. Their expressions ranged from impatient to confused as they took in his changed demeanor and lack of comedy props. "Change of plans," Ryan announced before they could question him. "We're going in a different direction." His social media director frowned, tapping his tablet with barely contained frustration. "But we had the whole bit planned, the resistance bands, the mock challenge." "I know," Ryan acknowledged. "And it would have been funny. Easy viral hit. But—" He paused, searching for the right words. "I think we can make something better. Something that actually matters." Skeptical glances passed between crew members. Ryan could practically hear their thoughts, the calculations of views versus effort, the risk assessment of deviating from a proven formula, the concern about squandering the momentum they'd built. Kevin stepped forward supportively. "Just hear him out. Trust me on this one." "Look," Ryan continued, "we've been riding this wave of performative fitness content, which is fine. It works, but we've got an opportunity here. Chuck Norris isn't just a meme or a punchline. He's dedicated his entire life to mastering something real. What if instead of just continuing the joke, we actually learn something from him? Show some respect for the craft." The director exchanged glances with the producer. "So, what exactly are you thinking? Interview format?" "Partly. But I want to capture something more authentic. The actual training, the philosophy behind it. Maybe talk to people like Coach Alvarez about the evolution of martial arts and fitness culture. Interview Mia about what she's observed managing a gym where celebrities and serious athletes train side by side. As Ryan outlined his new vision, he could see the team gradually warming to the concept. Not because it would necessarily perform better in the algorithm, but because it offered something different. Something with potential depth beyond the immediate gratification of viral metrics. It's a pivot, the producer acknowledged. But it could work. The contrast between your initial parody and this more respectful follow-up creates its own narrative arc. Exactly, Ryan agreed. It's about growth, not just gags. Across the gym, he noticed Chuck heading toward the exit. Gym bag slung casually over his shoulder. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. No words were exchanged, but Chuck gave a slight nod of acknowledgement, not approval exactly, but recognition. Of what, Ryan wasn't entirely sure, but it felt meaningful in a way that millions of likes never had. That evening, in his downtown apartment, Ryan sat alone reviewing the raw footage from the day's shoot. Not the comedy they'd planned, but something unexpected, honest reflections on training, discipline, and the difference between performance and practice. On screen, Coach Alvarez spoke with the same blunt insight he'd offered in person. You train for the cameras. You get good at looking like you're training. You train for yourself. You actually get good. Simple as that. In another clip, Mia reflected on the evolution of fitness culture. Social media changed everything. Now it's about how the workout looks, not how it functions. But the fundamentals haven't changed. Your body doesn't care if the movement is trending or not. Most compelling, though, was the brief footage they'd captured of Chuck himself. Not an interview exactly, since he'd declined to sit for a formal Q&A, but moments of him training, interspersed with the few insights he'd shared directly with Ryan. His simple words carried more weight than hours of manufactured content could have achieved. Ryan's phone buzzed constantly with notifications from his earlier teaser post, the internet hungry for the promised follow-up, speculating wildly about what had happened between him and Chuck Norris. Hashtags were already trending. Number Boomer CrossFit rematch. Number Reynolds vs Norris. Number Respect the Legend. For once, Ryan wasn't immediately responding, wasn't feeding the machine. Instead, he was taking his time, crafting something that felt true to the experience, rather than calculated for maximum engagement. The metrics might suffer, but something else might be gained. Kevin called around midnight. You okay, man? You've been radio silent. Internet's going crazy with theories about what went down with Chuck. I'm good, Ryan replied, surprised to find he meant it. Just working on something different. Different? How? Ryan considered the question, searching for a reference point Kevin would understand. Remember that stand-up set you did years ago? The one about your dad that wasn't particularly funny but was completely honest? There was a pause on the line. Yeah, Kevin said finally, his voice softening with recognition. Won me my first real award. Not the biggest crowd reaction, but it meant something. Ryan finished. That's what I'm aiming for here. Another pause, longer this time. When Kevin spoke again, his usual frenetic energy was replaced by something more genuine. I'm here for it, man. Whatever you need. After hanging up, Ryan returned to the editing process, searching for the right way to capture what he'd learned in that sparring room. Not a punchline or a viral moment, but something with substance, a bridge between his world of performative humor and Chuck's world of quiet discipline. On his screen, a clip played of Chuck demonstrating a simple movement with perfect form. No flash, no audience reaction, just the pure execution of a technique, honed over decades. Control isn't showmanship, Chuck had said. The words echoed in Ryan's mind as he continued working into the night, shaping something new from the unexpected collision of their worlds. It wasn't a dramatic transformation. Ryan was still Ryan, with all the wit and charm and strategic savvy that had built his career. But something had shifted. A subtle realignment of priorities and perspectives that felt like growth rather than change. A lesson learned not from trending topics or viral strategies, but from the quiet discipline of someone who had never chased the algorithm at all. As he worked through the footage, carefully shaping the narrative of this unexpected encounter, Ryan felt something he hadn't experienced in quite some time: the satisfaction of creating something that mattered to him regardless of how it would be received, not abandoning his persona or rejecting his success, but enriching it with something more substantial. The best comedy, after all, was grounded in truth, and sometimes the truth wasn't in the punchline, but in the quiet moment that followed it. 3 days later, Ryan stood in the doorway of Titan's Edge, early morning light filtering through the windows. The gym was nearly empty at this hour, serious trainers only, no social media posers or weekend warriors, just the kind of people who showed up before the world was watching. He'd come alone this time, no entourage, no camera crew, no Kevin providing running commentary. Just Ryan in simple training gear, a decision he'd made after releasing his unexpected follow-up video the previous evening. The piece had surprised everyone, his team, his followers, probably even himself. Instead of doubling down on the parody, he'd created something thoughtful and genuine. A mini-documentary exploring the evolution of training methods, featuring insights from Coach Alvarez, reflections from Mia, and moments of his own genuine attempts to learn from Chuck. The response had been mixed but intriguing. Some followers were disappointed by the lack of easy laughs, posting confused comments. Where's the punchline? Did Ryan get hacked? Or is this some 4D chess promo? But others had responded with unexpected depth. Never thought I'd get actually inspired by what started as a meme. Respect. This might be the most genuine thing I've seen from a celebrity in years. The view count was lower than his viral hit, but the engagement was different. More substantial comments, more meaningful interactions, fewer empty fire emojis. Ryan spotted Chuck immediately in the same back training area, working through the same disciplined routine. Nothing had changed in his approach, his intensity, or his focus. The viral storm that had swirled around them both online had left no visible mark on Chuck's reality. The thought was both humbling and reassuring. Ryan made his way across the polished floor, nodding to Mia at the desk. She returned the acknowledgement with a subtle smile, recognizing something different in his demeanor. No cameras, no performance, just purpose. As he approached, Chuck completed a combination on the heavy bag, then paused, seeming to sense Ryan's presence, before turning to face him. Sweat glistened on his forehead, but his breathing remained measured, controlled, the mark of someone whose conditioning came from years of consistent work, rather than sporadic intensity. "Reynolds," he said by way of greeting, no more or less warmth than their previous encounter. "Mr. Norris," Ryan replied, then corrected himself. "Chuck." Chuck gestured toward the nearby bench, inviting Ryan to join him during his brief rest period. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, two men from different eras of entertainment, finding unexpected common ground in the quiet morning hours, before the world fully awakened. The gym hummed with the subdued sounds of serious training, the rhythmic impact of gloves against bags, the controlled breathing of focused athletes, the occasional quiet instruction between trainer and student. No music pumped through speakers, no selfies being staged, just the authentic soundtrack of discipline. "I saw what you posted," Chuck said finally, his voice matter-of-fact rather than impressed or critical, different from what I expected. Ryan nodded, accepting the observation for what it was, acknowledgement rather than praise. It felt right, he said simply. More honest than what I'd planned. Chuck nodded once. Honesty ages better than humor. The observation was characteristically concise, yet profound. Ryan let it settle between them, appreciating that Chuck didn't offer effusive praise or validation, just quiet acknowledgement of the choice he'd made. There was something refreshing about interacting with someone who wasn't constantly performing enthusiasm or manufacturing reactions. I've been thinking about what you said, Ryan continued after a moment. About control versus showmanship. About knowing what you're capable of versus performing for others. Chuck took a measured sip from his water bottle, listening with the same attentiveness he brought to everything. My entire career is built on performance, Ryan admitted, finding himself speaking with unusual directness. On being the guy with the quick comeback, the perfect timing, the viral moment. And it works really well. But sometimes I wonder what's underneath all that, if there's anything solid beneath the show. It was perhaps the most genuine thing he'd said to anyone, in years certainly the most vulnerable thing he'd said to someone he barely knew. But something about Chuck's presence invited honesty in a way that felt safe rather than exposing. Chuck considered this, taking his time before responding, not from uncertainty, but from a place of careful thought. Performance isn't the problem, he said finally, meeting Ryan's eyes directly. Empty performance is. One comes from something real. The other tries to skip the foundation. Ryan nodded, understanding the distinction with new clarity. Like learning actual fighting techniques versus just mimicking what looks good on camera. Exactly. Chuck stood, beginning to rewrap his hands for another round with the heavy bag, the practiced motion almost meditative in its precision. The best performances come from real skill, real experience, then the showing off has substance behind it. The simplicity and truth of it resonated deeply. Ryan watched as Chuck prepared to return to his training, the same methodical routine he'd followed for decades. Camera or no camera, audience or no audience. Across the gym, a young trainer was showing a new client how to properly execute a basic movement. The trainer's instruction echoed Chuck's approach, focused on fundamentals rather than flashy techniques, on building a proper foundation before adding complexity. Ryan found himself watching with new appreciation for the craft underlying the work. I won't keep you from your workout, Ryan said, standing as well. I just wanted to say thank you. For the lesson. For not taking offense at the video. For. He searched for the right words. For being the real deal. Chuck extended his hand, and Ryan shook it, a gesture of mutual respect between two men who had found unexpected common ground across generations and approaches. Keep training, Chuck said, his grip firm but not challenging, with or without the cameras. With that, he returned to his workout. No dramatic farewell. No profound final wisdom. Just the simple continuation of discipline that had defined his life. The conversation ended not with a punchline, but with quiet acknowledgement more powerful in its restraint than any viral moment could have been. As Ryan turned to leave, he spotted Kevin entering the gym, looking around expectantly. When he saw Ryan, he hurried over, phone already in hand. His energy a stark contrast to the measured atmosphere of the early morning training session. Dude, the new video is blowing up, but in a completely different way. Kevin's voice carried across the quiet gym, drawing a few glances from the serious trainers. He lowered his volume slightly, continuing with barely contained excitement. Comment section is actually having, like, real conversations instead of just memes. People are sharing stories about their own training journeys. It's like, meaningful viral? Is that even a thing? Ryan glanced back toward Chuck, still focused entirely on his training, uninterested in the digital ripples spreading from their encounter. There was something profound in that indifference, not dismissive or arrogant, just centered in what actually mattered to him. "I think it is," Ryan replied thoughtfully. "Just a lot rarer." Kevin followed his gaze, lowering his voice with unusual seriousness. "He changed your perspective, huh?" "Not changed," Ryan corrected after considering the question. "Expanded it. Reminded me there's more than one way to make an impact." As they walked toward the exit, Coach Alvarez approached from the juice bar, a protein shake in his weathered hand, and a knowing look on his face. "Saw your piece," he said to Ryan, his tone gruff, but not unkind. "Not bad. Actually showed some respect for the craft." Coming from Alvarez, this constituted high praise. Ryan accepted it with a nod, understanding that the coach wasn't one for effusive compliments or empty validation. "One thing I've learned in 40 years of training fighters," Alvarez continued, glancing toward Chuck in the distance, "is that the loudest ones in the room rarely last. But the quiet ones? The ones who show up day after day when nobody's watching? They build something that lasts." He fixed Ryan with a penetrating look, his eyes carrying the wisdom of decades in the trenches of real training. "You can't tweet experience, kid. You gotta earn it." With that, he returned to his station, leaving Ryan and Kevin to digest the simple wisdom. Outside in the morning sunlight, Ryan paused before getting into his waiting car. The world was waking up around them, traffic increasing, pedestrians hurrying to work, the day's hustle beginning to build. Across the street, a group of teenagers had recognized him, phones out, filming excitedly. The familiar urge to perform arose automatically, to give them the Ryan Reynolds they expected. The quick wit, the perfect soundbite. Instead, he simply waved. Genuine but reserved. Not cold, not distant, just authentic. Present in the moment rather than performing for it. "That's new," Kevin observed as they got into the car. Ryan smiled. "Not new, just real." As they drove away, Ryan checked his phone one last time. The notifications continued to accumulate: comments, shares, reactions to his unexpected change of direction. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, he set the phone aside, content to let the moment exist without his constant management. In the gym behind them, Chuck Norris continued his training. The same disciplined routine he'd followed through decades of changing trends, technologies, and tastes. Not because anyone was watching. Not because it would go viral. Not because it would bring fame or followers. Simply because that's who he was. And in that quiet authenticity lay a power no performance could match: the power of substance over style, of discipline over display, of being rather than seeming. The lesson wasn't about abandoning performance or rejecting the spotlight. It was about ensuring that beneath the show lay something real, a foundation of substance that could support whatever structure was built upon it. Ryan hadn't abandoned his career or his persona. He'd simply gained a new perspective on what might anchor it. The car pulled into traffic, merging with the flow of the city. Inside, Ryan began describing to Kevin his ideas for their next project. Still creative, still entertaining, but informed by something new, something authentic. Behind them, unseen and uninterested in their departure, Chuck Norris continued his training. Just as he had yesterday. Just as he would tomorrow. In a world obsessed with noise, his silence spoke volumes. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.